If I could, I just wanted to respond to one detail that Supervisor Natoli brought up, and that's the question of how previously approved local NCCPs or HCPs would be affected by this policy. And we've discussed that thoroughly with the Department of Fish and Game and the Fish and Wildlife Service on page 146 in lines 28 through 31. Several drafts ago, text was added that confirmed that conservation measures that are implemented pursuant to a NCCP or HCP that was developed by a Delta local government and approved and permitted by Fish and Game prior to the effective date of the Delta Plan are consistent with these policies in the Delta Plan chapter on ecosystem restoration. So we've tried to make sure that we're not in any way creating any barrier to the implementation of previously approved NCCPs and HCPs.
Mr. Chair, just a comment, and certainly recognizing, obviously, the conversation that you alluded to that certainly goes on both here before this council and in local chambers, cities and counties. But I would just say that when you look at the areas that are being designated, the reason that they've been outlined is because they may have not only identified habitat potential value for restoration and so forth, but you look at these areas, and I would argue strenuously that the local jurisdictions and the property owners, certainly as long term, have been good stewards. Why, in fact, do you have floodplains? Because that aren't built in, that are open for opportunity, is because you haven't built in them generally, and you've got areas that are farming, these agricultural areas. There are areas that if I look at the five bulleted ones on 150, on page 151, those areas, that are looked to do as opportunity, they've been preserved through the generations. And in fact, and I know in some of those cases, restoration efforts have been undertaken, obviously, by state agencies, federal agencies, and locals and private conservancies, and have been built upon significantly. I'll just take the Casimas River, Macomb River confluence, that area where over the course of the last 2 or 3 decades, you've had thousands and thousands of acres that have been assimilated to do restoration, both terrestrial and I think even some water. At any rate, it just seems to me that when you put this reservation with the uncertainty, and I think going to Melinda's point about it's not just about property value or down zoning. I think the recognition, obviously, in local planning efforts and certainly in the state planning efforts, and referencing the document that we just incorporated as an appendix, we recognize that. But it seems to me that you certainly leave a lot of uncertainty for some of these smaller projects. And I appreciate Joe's explanation as to how it might be treated, but I still think that leaves a lot of uncertainty because it's going to be somebody else interpreting this 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and how that gets played out in the added costs for local projects. When I hear the thing about a levy, if somebody wants to do a levy to improve the protection that we argue so strenuously for in some of the other chapters, they may have to, in these areas, if they want to do that, have to run the gauntlet of covered actions and coming through on some appeal. That concerns me. So anyway, I think I've said enough, but I have enough reservation that I'm not prepared to support this morning.
Okay.